Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoutmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Active Turnkey podcast. I'm your host, Jared Stoutmeister, and we do not today have the Tom Olson. We do not. These are not Tom Olson. No, we actually have some special guests with us. So along the journey, and when we started the Active Turnkey podcast, we were hoping to have other investors, and so on a few occasions we've had investors who do turnkey rental properties. And who have experiences with doing what we do here. And so we have a couple guests with us today. And so we have Tuukka and Adele. They're a married couple, and they actually live here in Northwest Indiana, and they invested here for a couple years. We'll get into that, but they're also not going to be in Northwest Indiana for a while. So you got an opportunity, right?
Yes, we are actually moving to Florida, Pensacola, Florida. Mm-hmm. I accepted job offer there, and I'm actually leaving in 2 days' time myself, and the rest of the family will follow a little bit later. Yeah,
so they've invested with us for several years now, and I reached out to Tuukka a couple weeks ago to get him on the podcast, and he's like, well, I'm like, hey, can you do this day? This doesn't work for me. This doesn't work for me. Back and forth, we're working together on it. And he's like, well, I am leaving for Pensacola. and I'm, oh, wow, we better get this in. And so interestingly enough, some of you investors or some of you listeners know that we do have our second market in Pensacola. And so it is not the same. We're not partners now or anything like that. It just happened to work out that way. But he is certainly looking for some new opportunities. And actually, maybe we can have him back down the road to give us a Pensacola perspective. That's an idea, right? Yeah. But for today, we're just going to talk a little bit about their experience in the turnkey space. But before we get into that, we'd like to get to know them a little bit better. So while you guys, why don't you guys tell listeners a little bit about yourself, tell about your family, how you guys met. You guys are from different countries, yes. And so tell about that, and also what you did for schooling, for your job, stuff like that.
Okay, my name is Tuukka, and I'm originally from Finland. I'm 42 years old now. I left Finland when I was 26. Moved to South Africa, working in the pulp and paper industry, and I got a job there. And actually, that's where we met.
Sparks flew.
Yeah. Spent about 10 years in South Africa, and then relocated to US, to Valparaiso, Indiana. And now we've been here six and a half years now. We married, we have 4 kids, and now it's time to relocate again. So
how old are the kids?
Kids are oldest daughter is 22, twin boys are 17, and then we have a young one turning 4 years old, a boy, turning 4 next week actually.
Awesome! Wow, and it's definitely exciting, and definitely relocating. They had enough of Northwest Indiana apparently. And so I actually have family in Pensacola as well. I do, but it's really interesting, the journey and how you've been moving around for sure. So you guys are accustomed to that. Tell me about your schooling. Did you guys go to school anywhere?
Yes. I started in Finland. Studied paper technology there, and after graduation, actually, it was tough to find a job in that industry in Finland. That's the reason I started looking elsewhere in the world, and I had some interviews actually already that time from the US that didn't work out. I had some interview in UK that didn't work out, so then I ended up in South Africa.
It worked out, right?
Yeah,
it did. Definitely. Yeah. How about you, Adele? Did you have any schooling, anything to speak of? Okay.
Well, I'm South African, so sorry for the accents.
They have to deal with my accent. So I'm sorry. Yeah.
I did accounting and auditing at school, so financial background. Met Tuukka on internet dating site.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
a blind date, kind of.
Cool.
And things head off from there. And we've always been passionate about property. It just makes our hearts beat faster when we see real estate. So it was easy to love it and easy to invest into it.
I remember the first time. So we met at a meetup group.
Yeah, it was one of these local RIA meetings. I think you introduced, or I think you had some case study for.
I think so.
For turnkey property. I think even Tom Olsen was in that same meeting that time, and that's where we met.
Yeah. So I remember the first. So we met there. We talked for quite some time, and then I think you guys ended up coming in the office. I think at that time we were, trying to work out some opportunities, find you some deals. And I remember it's because you talked about, real estate gets your heart going. And so Adele would be like, "Oh, I love this house. This is awesome." When we were walking through properties, and Adele's like, "It's okay," because he's got to put his game face on for whether or not he wants to buy the house. I thought it was great, but we've worked together for years now, and it's been really good. So I appreciate you guys letting us get to know you a little bit. But so how long have you guys been real estate? So now, Tuukka, you had some experience before.
Yeah, actually, I have some rental properties in Finland. The first one I bought, that was just before I left Finland. So it was somewhere end of 2005. And in Finland, the typical rental property is a bit different than here in the US. Like here, you have a big market for single family houses. In Finland, not so much. It's more like these smaller apartments, like size from studio to 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. So all the units I have there, it's actually small units. So I bought the first one before I left Finland. So that was, what is it now?
Before you even had your first job.
16 years ago or something?
Wow.
17 years ago.
So you're a real estate, you got all kind of expert in a way. You got all kinds of experience. Sure. That's good. No, it's interesting. Some guys who barely have experience at all will tell you how much they know, and guys who've been investing for 15 plus years come off unassuming, and that's really good. Okay, so why real estate? I know you had some experience then. Like my son. So you said you started when you were a young age. I'm trying to get my son in here. He's actually going to be joining the team. He'll graduate in a couple weeks, and he's going to come and join the team with our acquisitions department. And we're already trying to put a plan together for how he's going to start building a portfolio for himself. And so why did you choose real estate? And specifically for goals, financial freedom. There's many ways to get there. So why real estate?
I think, at that time when I was buying the first unit in Finland, I didn't have any cash flow calculation. I don't know. I just winged it. I thought
a deal.
It's like I think the rent didn't even cover the mortgage expense. I just calculate, okay, if I put half from my own pocket and half I get from the rent, that's a good enough deal for me. I had not studied real estate that time at all. But I just kind of like the idea that, hey, if my tenant is paying not the full amount, but at least some of my mortgage, I like that concept.
Sure.
Later on, it developed and more focus on the actual cash flow, and also what I like about it that you can leverage that with the loan, and I find it quite stable investment, not fluctuating like stock market maybe, and kind of like safe investment. So cash flow for me is I like it. It's just like it doesn't matter where I'm physically. It's just cash flow coming in.
So you've learned now after years of experience, cash flow is good. You like that cash flow. That's good.
And then on top of it, like appreciation and all the others. But that's kind of just like a bonus on top of it.
How about you, Adele? From this perspective, as far as goals, financial freedom, how have you seen real estate helping you get there?
First of all, I like that it's a tangible asset. It just gives you a bit more safer feeling. And then second of all, you can use other people's money to finance it. You just have to put a little bit down, and you can just. Which other investment gives you that?
Sure.
You can't say I'm going to buy 10,000 stocks and you give me 90,000 and I have more.
Well played. That's good.
Yeah, and so from that perspective, we just really loved, and we like I said, we're passionate about properties, and we like to to be able to give people accommodation, the people who need it who can't get finance, and you kind of help other people too.
That's
so,
good.
Yeah.
Now, have you guys had experience with stocks before?
Not much.
No,
Just,
okay.
just like some are buying a little bit, selling. Just kind of like a testing.
Sure.
But we're talking about few $1,000s, not more than that.
Yeah, my son was trying before he was 18. He wasn't allowed by law to be able to buy and sell, and he was wanting to basically do it with you have me go on and me do it, and he would buy and sell through it. I'm like, frankly, I don't know a lot about about stocks, and so it was just kind of funny how that worked out. But that's definitely really interesting, and how you get there. And again, you started off really young. That's really good. So why Turnkey Rentals now? So you bought back home in Finland. What guided you guys to the rental property? A lot of single family. I know you wouldn't mind some multi units, but why Turnkey Rentals? What guided you to that part?
Well, here in the US, started studying real estate here. Like there's much more material available written in English in the US than compared to Finland. Nowadays there starts to be a little bit more books and stuff. But started really studying the topic and all these Kiyosaki books and all sorts of other books. And also the other side of here, there's a lot of tax planning and tax benefits and entity structures and I just got interested in the whole concept of real estate and everything that's around it, and started looking for properties like just on MLS, and then it was always like, well, I haven't bought any houses here, so always a little bit hesitant, like what about if it's a disaster, like some hidden stuff there, and I don't know what to look for, and then in these RIA meetings, like when I met you, and then I didn't know that there's this kind of concept of turnkey, that somebody buys the house, fix it, gets a tenant, and even manages like you guys do. So I felt like, that concept works for me. I know that you pay the market price for that, but then also like having a job, I don't have time or even interest to look like manage the properties, and I found it less risky because somebody's already done all the work, and it's when you get the house, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be worried that there might still be something surprising, but much less risk for that. So the whole concept kind of suited me or us.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you think? Why real estate for a turnkey property specifically?
We don't know construction. We don't want to know construction. We want that comfort of knowing that I'm buying a good product. And yes, we've had some things come up, but they were minimal, and we could deal with them. And we are willing to pay a little bit more to have that comfort. And it's a luxury, actually.
And the numbers still work.
It's still cash flows.
Yeah.
So for us, it's a win-win. And I mean, yes, and we make business for you guys too.
Sure. No, we've said this many times. It's called the Active Turnkey Podcast. It is designed for people who want to do bird deals. I mean, that's what we did, and we sold hundreds of those properties, and for several years until it became difficult to provide that product consistently. But we've said all along that if you can do it, if you could do it yourself, it is the best way to do it. If you can do it that way, do the bird type strategy. You can really do well. However, those risks are so major, especially today where there's just less room. The mistakes are magnified because you just typically don't have that space anymore. When we were selling the product to our clients, we were selling them LTV about 70 to 75% of value. So that gives them plenty of space for error. Whereas nowadays it's a lot more difficult. And so I'm with you. My experience, and many of you know this, my experience is not construction. In fact, I didn't have any sales experience, and I mean, you guys were testing me.
I know the first house, right?
Yeah. And so it's obviously a learning experience, something you can learn over time. You start to understand, hey, this costs this costs this is what happens. But learn that all on your own right away, and taking that risk, especially with cash, like you said, that's a pretty big deal.
And the legal side of it too, for management side, we don't have all that knowledge, and we don't want to deal with lawyers and evictions, and it just makes life easier. Right?
Yes. Now, again, it's not even to say that stuff doesn't come up. Like you said, I mean, you have attorneys, you're going to have evictions, but what do you do? How do you evict if you're doing it on your own?
I wouldn't even know where to start.
Exactly.
The law changes every few months.
Sure.
You need to be on top of that.
Especially with COVID, that's a whole new world, and we're not going to get into that today. We're going to stay away from that. Okay, so you like turnkeys. Why, or excuse me, what type of properties do you want? Like, what are you looking for in a turnkey property? What you mentioned a few things already, but like, what kind of grabs your attention? What gets your heart racing, as you said?
I'd say like, so far, all the properties we bought here been 3-bedroom, one bath. Like, I think that works for us, and. You guys, what I like about these turnkeys, the way you guys do it, it's quite nice, or I would say very nice finishing for rentals. And so I just want to know that it works well for rental, that it looks good, and if tenant leaves, it's easy to get another one. But then another thing is, when I look at it, it's like thinking my exits. Like I could easily sell these to another investor, but I could also, because the finishing is so nice that you don't have to do much if you want to sell it, like list it on MLS, and it would sell without starting to upgrade kitchens and stuff like that. Yeah. So kind of looking at the whole concept, obviously cash flow, how easy to get another tenant, that you don't get months and months to find somebody, and then what about if I want to sell it, and like, especially now with the prices going up, we're not planning to sell, but just to have that option.
Absolutely.
So those are the kind of things. And then, well, we local here, like when there's something available, it's just 30 minutes and we can drive by.
Sure.
Like you notice that some of the things, or some of the properties you had available, we drove by and just, without even going inside, like, nah, I don't know, it's just, I don't like the neighbor. Something doesn't work, and I can't explain what, but kind of just,
maybe it's an instinct.
Sure.
Something.
Although now that I think afterwards, like,
sure.
you guys don't have so many properties available. I'm just thinking, like, we should have bought every single one of them.
Yeah, we have heard that, and actually, so you know, Tuukka, I would say when you first started, you were a lot more strict. Now, I think that makes sense. I think it's a good strategy. I really do. If you're getting started, I think it's a good idea to be a little bit more strict, because you may not know how good of a manager you have. And so you want to get as good of an asset as possible right off the bat. And but as you go, I have seen you guys, your own criteria has, or area you guys have seen maybe more potential in specific areas.
There's more trust.
Sure, and that might be the biggest thing.
That's the important thing. In the beginning, like, you don't know anybody, and then what's going to happen here? But then you buy a second one, and okay, everything's going fine. So, and we know your style, how you do these houses, and you kind of know what type of houses we're looking for. So you kind of have to build that relationship.
Sure, and that does happen. And usually for new investors, they're really concerned about getting that deal. And then after a while, they realize that pretty much most of the deals are pretty much the same. As far as materials and design and things like that. So, and he touched on it, Tuukka touched on it. It's really helpful. And if you listen to Tom recently, Tom has said recently that there's a strategy that he's been working with investors, like the 3 to 5 year plan. That's on top of, so one thing we've said is just buy and hold forever, right? And just hold and build wealth that way. And but you mentioned having the option to sell, and there is this other opportunity when you're talking about a 3 to 5 year plan, and more specifically, so basically you buy the house, in this case you buy turnkey. A couple of years ago, like 5-6 years ago, our standard was not what it is today when it comes to finishes. Now it's a completely different product, to where if 3 or 4 years down the road you want to go back in and you want to say do a fix and flip. like today, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we weren't offering quartz countertops in our finishes, and our surrounds weren't always tile. Now they're tile. We didn't always put a backsplash in. Now they're back. So that means this time around, for our investors who bought in the last 3 to 4 years, 5 years now, that, like you said, going in there and sprucing it up, because you're going to have to clean it up, that cost is going to be lower. And it's going to help you if you want to get the house on the market. Your cost to do that's going to be lower. So that's definitely a whole nother picture. And some people, for me right now, as I'm building my portfolio, I really like the idea of holding, just me personally. But it's also very tempting when you see a house. I have one house that I'm doing right now. I bought it in the 20s a couple years ago, and at the time I thought the house was worth about $50,000. Today it's worth 170.
Wow.
And so now, and I have a loan right now for like in the 30s. So it's like, to have that kind of room of equity, it's tempting, but it gives you options to do something along that line. So that's really good. I appreciate that take. So with that being said, for Turnkey, how's your experience been as far as with the turnkeys? Because you said that was new for you. So what have been some of the roadblocks? Maybe what have been some things that you've learned along the way? Give us a little bit about that.
Well, I can tell you the first one, Tuukka and I was so scared.
Oh, really?
We were at the point like, just do it. Right? Just sign the papers, just do it. What happens, happens. But it was the best decision ever.
Cool.
And I will never forget that first house. It's something you always remember.
Sure.
But that's actually the first one is
the one who gave us the Marcy cups.
Yeah.
Funny enough. But nothing with Olsen Group.
Yeah, there was some, I don't know why you guys always buy these houses that have the biggest tree in the neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah.
One of the trees had to be cut. It actually it started splitting. And I think it was during one of your inspections, or somehow somebody noticed that that it was, you could put like 2 fish days, it started splitting, and that was towards the end of the year, and Cheryl, the property manager, struggled to get quotations for tree felling, and then she got one. It's quite pricey, and then I didn't action immediately, and I said, okay, I'll think about it. And then next week comes, and there was some storms coming, and the tree was getting worse and worse. I started seeing like nightmare scenarios, that falling on a roof or falling on a tenant or something.
Sure.
Then okay, let's do it. Well, meanwhile, it was a week before Christmas, or not Christmas week, and then the contractors or the company said, okay, now it's 5,000. It's like, well, I have no option. Just do it.
Oh, really? You did do it? Wow. Okay.
We had to.
Sure.
It's a big risk.
So it took a couple of, they had to remove the fence and get in there, and well, they also trimmed the other tree in the front. So it was that was like the reality check. Like, it's not always just rent checks coming in. Yeah. Sometimes you have to pay something as well. So, and then there was some. Yeah, the same property also had some mold that has to be done, and the tenants had to leave for a few days. Yep. Like you guys also had these B&Bs. They actually stayed in one of the B&Bs. So it was just like, what's going on with this property now? But okay, that just destroyed the cash flow for that year. But now we're back on track. So
the other houses had zero problems. So. It happens, and it's gonna happen, right? It's just how you deal with it, and you move on, and that's life.
Well, you brought something that's really important along there. So you mentioned the inspections, and so that is something that I know for as you guys walked in, the property manager was walking out to go do an inspection. So those of you who haven't properties with Olsen Group, we are ramping the inspections back up again. And like you said, that was the condition of that tree was found during an inspection, and that's exactly what you really want. I mean, we have worked with different property managers over the years that never check the property. The only time maybe they might go is if there's a problem that the tenant brings, and if you're relying on your tenant, it doesn't always they don't always report it like they should. And so definitely that's definitely one thing you like to see is we've shared this story many times, but we had an investor who had another local property manager, and he was upset at Olsen Group, or excuse me, Olsen Property Services, for these repairs that would come along. And he's like, man, this property manager, I never hear anything from them. And we're like, hey, if you never hear anything, that could be a problem. That's not necessarily a good thing. And so that does exist. So that's a good one. Anything else you guys have learned? Any other roadblocks? Any other things you've learned along the way? Maybe how about some mistakes too? Some things maybe you didn't think of that maybe you felt like you should have known better, or things you learned along that line of thinking, or.
I can't really think really.
Well, you must check that your extractor fan
vents
out of the house.
That's one thing. that was the one thing that first property.
Yeah.
I don't know if it some old building code or something that the bathroom extraction actually went to the attic.
Yes.
I don't know if it's some old style.
Yeah, it's very common if you're buying a property. In fact, today, if you buy from Olsen Group, we actually even provide inspection. So I think when you guys first started, we didn't do that before.
Yeah.
So that's things that we've, along with our finishes, we begin to now provide inspection reports to our clients. And that's usually something that comes up. So if you ever buy a property, it's I think you're right as far as like old building code. As long as it didn't build up in the bathroom, it was okay. But typically they empty out in the attic. And if you have moisture, it's going somewhere.
That caused the mold there because it went to the attic. So nowadays when we check any properties, I just I go to the bathroom and check that there's extraction fan, and then I go outside and see if it actually goes through the
That's
and then
great.
we check the trees.
Yeah, and check the trees.
That's true. But folks, that's how you build a scope of work. In some ways. So now if you get a scope of work from Olsen Group today, you'll find a line item that says make sure that there's an exhaust fan and make sure it's vented outside. Yeah. And so that is for that very reason, because most houses we acquire, they're not vented properly. And so it's definitely something you want to pay attention to. So as an investor, you've learned by experience
and even
pay attention for
even
that.
With these problems, I'm laughing and smiling now. So it's not so bad afterwards, but that moment it was like disaster. Like I don't know what to do, and like it's gonna cost this much money and all that. But it's done. Let's move on.
Well, and that is relative. So I mean, there are some situations we've seen where your disaster to you, some other investor would take that over their situation, right? And so things come up, and it's tough, but we definitely can learn along the way, and that's something you want to think of. And another thing to want to keep in mind when you're an investor, when you're buying and you look at that pro forma, one of the things that is on that pro forma is vacancy and maintenance, right? And so sometimes we want to make sure we're accounting for maintenance, but when a maintenance repair comes up, we hate it when actually you do technically put away 5% per month toward maintenance. And so it is something that you should account for. If you're an investor, you should never bank on that cash flow, like you said.
Yeah, because you get used to those months when you don't have extra repairs. And then that comes like the new norm, like that's how much I'm cash flowing every month. And then when something happens and you're upset, but then you should remember that was your original calculation anyways.
That's what he's saying.
Right. And you totally forget it. And I'm that way myself. You hate to have to pay something out, and you realize, well, this is part of what we do. You have to expect these things to come up. But that's really good. So tell us something. You said good and some mistakes. Anything else you have? Any other feedback on that line?
I would say that with maintenance, Olsen Group has been fantastic.
Oh, okay.
There's a certain value that Cheryl won't contact us. She will sort it out, and we just see, there was something. They sorted it out, and I could really tell people out there it's fantastic.
So you're saying like they notified you of a repair, but it got taken care of?
If it's a low value, they just don't even notify us.
Gotcha.
There's a value limit that you can set that you're comfortable with, and it's under say $300
or $500.
It depends on per customer, I guess.
Sure, that's true. Some investors. Now I'll tell you, some investors they don't like that number. In some ways, they feel like the property manager may use that. They want to be notified about everything. But so you're saying that you have that peace of mind knowing that they're just going to care for it and not going to be worried
about
it.
And the pricing, as I've seen, I think it was very fair.
Okay.
With the pricing that they charge.
And
it's been very smooth sailing.
The monthly, like the rental statement, and then I don't mind this. Like I don't need to be notified. I think it was $400 or $500 the limit. I don't need to know like if a door was replaced or whatever. And a couple properties that the sewer clog had to be open, and then just every month you check the rental statement and that the rents come in and what the repairs were, and a couple times like, okay, that the sewer was blocked. Okay, well, I didn't even have to know, now it's sorted out. And the last month or month or two ago, one tenant had told that the stove doesn't work, and then that was above the limit, maybe $850 or something to replace it, and then we got notified that, hey, do you approve this? And like, yeah, just go ahead, because your tenant will need a stove. It doesn't matter what it costs to do it. So.
That's an interesting perspective, and so and I'm kind of on both sides of that. So as an investor, there are certain things where I feel the same way. It's like, no, just do it, please. And then other times you're kind of like, And now rotting is one of them. You talked about that rotting. So we had a situation recently where the lines were rotted. Typically that's an investor bill. When you're talking about the lines, typically the tenant doesn't have much to do with that, unless they are flushing things down that they shouldn't be. And one tenant was flushing down wipes by the tons, and they thought it was okay. And so the tenant had to cover that. So there are situations where maybe a bill might come in, and then they actually find out what it was and the situation. And actually, in that case, for that particular investor, they didn't have to pay for it. It was a tenant's responsibility.
One thing we also picked up that we learned from was septic tanks.
Oh yeah,
we never dealt with that before. So one of the properties had that, and it's something you have to learn. So now we also look out for those. And
that's good. That's good. Is that for what specific property are you thinking? Marshall. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And so all this is information. It helps you learn, and it helps you learn to ask the right questions. You can do all the kind of reading you want to. You can have people feeding you things. But like you said, now you look for the vent, you look for the tree, and maybe now you're looking sewer septic, paying attention. How often is it getting pumped? Stuff like that. Those are all things that you learn along the way and are really good. So naturally, for this podcast, Tom and I do our very best to add as much value as we can. And we do try to not trumpet Olsen Group too much. But many of you do know we do build rental portfolios for investors, and that's our goal, to help people grow. And so naturally, you guys have worked with us for several years now, working along the way, and you guys have learned some things. And we've just talked about a few situations where stuff happens, and how do Olsen Group respond accordingly? How do Olsen Property Services respond? So would you mind giving just a little bit of feedback, as much you guys want to say about your experience with Olsen Group and Olsen Property Services?
Oh, okay. It started when we did our first contract. Cheryl had an interview with us, and Tom Olsen came in, and they just explained everything step by step, and it was very comforting. And it's nice because we are here, that we can come into the office and speak to a person and have all our questions answered, and even if it's not silly questions, but
sure.
To go through it. And it was wonderful, and through the years building that trust, and it's been good for both sides.
Good.
I think good business.
Oh, I agree. And it should be. It really should be helpful for everybody. If it's one-sided, that relationship's not going to go on very well.
And now we're following the Tom Olsen to Pensacola.
That's right. Fault. Wow, it's his fault. I'll make sure to tell him that. That's good. How about you, Tuukka?
Yeah, overall things been going very well, and the property's been performing well. And like just now, last month, the change of tenants. I think it was just a week or two. I don't know. You guys probably had to do some touch of paint or something, but it was easy to find another tenant. But the ladies they told that the new tenant didn't even mind that you don't have to clean it. I just want to move in now.
Can I get in? I love this house.
Yeah.
And we've never had a long extended vacancy, not once, in the 5 years. So that speaks a lot.
Yeah, I like the way that the properties look. It's like I said, it could be when the property is done, available, it could be listed in MLS easily, just like that.
Yeah, if you can see yourself, you could live there, then it's nice enough that you can rent it out to somebody else.
Sure.
It's in a good condition.
The property services, or the property management services, that's been working well.
Good.
And good example is that we don't hear often from the property management, but we hear often enough that we know that you guys are doing something.
Sure, that's good.
And then also when you look the rental statement, like I love the months that there's no repairs, nothing, but also you do see occasionally that there's some small maintenance repairs, so you know that that's all happening on the background, and we don't have to worry about it.
And a plus was sometimes you guys have seminars or training, and we've benefited greatly from that. And
that's great.
we loved coming here for the training.
The only
and
problem
great
is that
speakers.
you don't have enough stock.
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
only problem. More houses.
I thought that might come up. Yeah, and so that is definitely the theme with our clients. So a couple of years ago, our goal was to put out 80 deals a year total, and so that's still around the goal for Olsen Group, but that's kind of halved between flips and turnkeys. I do believe if you're listening out there and you're one of our clients that we should be able to provide more inventory in the next 6 months. We're going to have probably double what we would have offered in the previous year. I do think
turnkey or are they?
No, we'll have more turnkey product for sure. And so I'm very excited about it. We have a few we're working on now, so hopefully we can help you that. And I was expecting that to come up, and we've had some good experiences too. And so Tuukka and Adele, their first Gary property, if I remember correctly, was one that didn't appraise. And and that was an experience that's fairly common when you're in a market like Gary, where you're trying to set the market, where houses in the area are selling, and it's just you don't want to get accusing people of doing different things as far as appraisers goes, but we worked through it. We were able to make it happen for them, and we got a good deal done, and you guys have owned that one for a few years now, But I appreciate you guys joining us, and of course we want to say good luck as you guys travel to Pensacola, and it's going to be just a touch warmer down there, and I do think we should have you guys back on to discuss the Pensacola market.
Thanks for the invitation. That's actually interesting.
Yeah.
Years or 2 years time. I don't know.
Sure, yeah. We're doing tons of work down there now. We got a property manager working with. Eventually, Olsen Group Olsen Property Services will have their license down there as we start to build it. No, we really appreciate you guys coming on. And the other thing we'll tell you is, again, we do build rental portfolios for investors. And so if you're looking to get started, we'd love to get to work with you. You can visit our website at buyolsengroup.com, or you can email me directly at jared@buyolsengroup.com. If you go to our website, you can sign up for our list, which often comes with links to podcasts. So before they were talking about Tuukka likes to watch the podcast, Adele likes to listen to them. And so that's fair. I don't know if I want to watch myself, so I think I'd probably listen.
This one I might listen.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's really good. But now, if you're interested in taking part in a podcast, you can certainly reach out to me as well. I think it'd be great. If you've appreciated this podcast, hopefully you have. Give us a thumbs up, a like, share it. 5-star rating, all that stuff. We'd really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us. And Active Turnkey, the best way to buy rentals. We'll see you guys later. Olsen Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olsen Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olsen Group Network. Olsen Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.